and called police after each time he committed a crime, crying on the phone. This is the story of Minnesota's weepy voice. Between 1980 and 1982, a terrifying pattern emerged in the Minneapolis-St. Paul part of Minnesota. Women were discovered in isolated places, brutally attacked or unalived. Then came phone calls to the local police station from a voice that begged, quote,
"Will you find me? I can't stop."
Let's start at the beginning. On New Year's Eve in 1980, 20-year-old Karen Potek was savagely and left near a factory. She had suffered brain damage, but miraculously she survived. And hours later, police received a 911 call from someone in tears saying, quote,
"There's a girl hurt."
Then, 6 months later, in June of 1981, 18-year-old Kimberly Compton was 61 times. Then again, a call came into the police station from that same weepy voice saying, quote,
"Goddamn, will you find me? I just somebody with an ice pick. I can't stop myself."
Days later, he called again to say sorry and to correct the news reports. This man was tracking his own headlines and calling the police to tell them which parts of the story were right and which were reported incorrectly. A year later, around mid-1982, a woman named Kathleen Greening was found in her bathtub, but there was no phone call to the police after they discovered her body. At least none that the public heard about. Then, just a few months after Kathleen's body was found, in August of 1982, 40-year-old nurse Barbara Simmons was brutally over 100 times, and she was found by the Mississippi River. They called police again, saying, quote,
"Please don't talk, just listen. I'm sorry, that girl. I stabbed her 40 times."
which was way under the 100 that officials found on her body. And by this point, he was known as the Weepy Voice. But the problem was, how do you catch someone who calls anonymously and then disappears before help arrives? For the last time, on August 21st, 1982, he attacked a woman named Denise Williams. She survived her attack and struck her attacker with a glass bottle, making him bleed. So he fled the scene bleeding and called 911 for help. And the dispatchers recognized his voice right away. They knew they had the Weepy Voice on the phone. His name was Paul Michael Stephanie, a 37-year-old hospital janitor. When questioned, he denied everything, until detectives played the recordings of the weepy-voiced calls. And even witnesses from past attacks confirmed that yes, this was the man that attacked them, this was the weepy-voiced. In 1983, Paul was found guilty of unaliving Barbara Simmons and attacking Denise Williams. He was given 40 years for the unaliving and 18 years for the attempted unaliving. I know what you're thinking. He was only convicted for hurting 2 women when our story had 5. Well, while rotting in prison, he was diagnosed with terminal skin cancer, and he confessed to everything. He admitted to the 3 unalivings and 2 violent assaults, which included the confession of Kathleen Greening's. He tied points together that police couldn't, and he finally owned up to all of his actions. He said there was a voice in his head that told him, quote,
"Oh, Paul, it's time to go."
He felt guilty after each attack. He said, quote, I'm sick and I'm sorry, if sorry means anything after 15 years. He did pass away in prison in June of 1988, just 5 years after starting his sentence, after he was convicted at the age of 53. This case set a precedent for how police handled phone calls from then on. Police upgraded call logging systems, started tracking voice analysis programs, and launched awareness campaigns to teach people when to speak up about suspicious behavior. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for spending time with me, and thank you for listening
about you, and it's no one else like you is what they're getting. Positive vibes only.
If you have any cases that you want me
Shout
to
out to
cover in
King
the
Saul's
future,
boss
please
and
leave
the
those in
Bill
comments
about
as
you,
well.
and
I
it's
read all of your comments.
Who else, man?
I post true crime videos every day, so if you like that kind of content, follow along so you don't miss the next video. And please stay safe out there. You never know what's around the corner.
So this guy used to be a taxi driver in the 90s, and he says this is a true story. Let me show you my earrings, because then y'all gonna be mad. I was born in the 90s. I'm turning 35 this year. That number is getting serious. So this guy says that when he used to be a taxi driver, he would arrive back home around 2 or 3 in the morning. So on this particular night, he got home around 1 in the morning and noticed that his neighbor was having like a prayer group in her house. When he got out of his car, he noticed that the neighbor's door was open and he can hear everybody praying inside. He did think it was weird because he didn't think anybody would have like prayer groups around that time. So as he's seeing these people praying, there's some people outside as well Well, he notices the owner of the house, which is his neighbor, coming out and going straight to him. When he looks at her, he notices that she's really scared and worried, and he had never seen that kind of expression from her face before. When she finally gets to him, she asks him if he could do her a favor and take her back to her hometown. This town that she wanted him to take her to was like an hour away, and he almost told her no because he was really tired from working all night, but because he saw that worried look in her face, he was like, okay, get in, I'll take you. So as they're driving, he turns to her and he's like, hey, what was going on in your house? And he says that she just looks up at him and shrugs her shoulders, saying that she doesn't know. Even though she claimed that she didn't know, he knew that it was something urgent, something bad, because of the way that she was looking at him when she asked for the ride. So around that time that they were driving, the weather completely changed and it was really, really cold. They were both really cold in the car, and he decided to turn the heat on. Minutes later, the temperature in their car got back to normal. He was no longer cold, but when he turned to look at his neighbor, she was still freezing.
What would you do if your child said this? If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, but today I'm going to be talking about specifically something my sister has said. Let's get into it. So just for some baseline context, my sister was very imaginative when she was growing up, and that is exactly what my family wrote it off as for years. And before I get a comment that's like, oh, it's very common for children to do this, I don't think so, because this was not a one-time occurrence with just one specific age that she was at. It was like throughout her whole life, she would say stuff like this. This is another key detail. My mom would tuck in my sister every night without fail and give her what we call pats, which is, you know, when my mom would rub my sister's back or give her like pats on the back until she fell asleep every night. And the first time she started saying stuff about what I'm about to tell you was right after the death of my great-grandmother in 2009. My sister did not understand the concept of death or dying. She was like 5. And about a week after the funeral, my sister tells my mom that great-grandma came and visited her at night. My mom immediately was like, what are you talking about? Were you scared? And my sister was like, no, she just gave me pats, that's all. That horrified my mom, but it gets worse. When my sister started sleeping on her own, she had little hammocks full of stuffed animals. And when my mom came in to give her pats one night, she realized that all of the stuffed animals in her room were now like on one side of her bed. My sister would sleep on the other side, and then the stuffed animals would take up literally head to toe the entire other side. And my mom just told her like, hey, I can't get into bed with you because all your friends are here. And my sister was like, yeah, you can like move them, but just make sure to move them back. And mind you, this is a couple years after the whole great grandma situation. And my mom just asked my sister because there was like 100 stuffed animals on the one side of her bed, a full-size bed. And my sister replies with, I just don't like
JonBenét Ramsey. This case makes me severely uncomfortable for so many reasons and does not sit well with me. JonBenét was an American child beauty queen who was killed in her family home on Christmas night. She was 6 years old. December 25th, 1996, the Ramseys attend a Christmas party. The Ramseys consist of JonBenét herself and her 9-year-old brother Burke, her mom Patsy, and her dad John. This Christmas party was hosted by family friend Fleet White. According to JonBenét's parents, they leave the Christmas party and JonBenét goes to sleep, not waking up for the rest of the night. Next morning, around 5:30 a.m., JonBenét's mom Patsy gets up and finds a 2.5-page ransom note. This note stated that her daughter had been kidnapped and they are to withdraw $118,000. They want $100,000 of it in $100 bills and the other $18,000 in bills of $20. This ransom letter says to not call 911, but Patsy does anyways. She also calls friends and family to help in the search of her daughter. Apparently, they only had JonBenét's room cornered off, so friends and family are just freely walking around the house, possibly disturbing evidence. Police officers have John and a family friend look around the house just to maybe find anything else. This is when they check the basement and they find the lifeless body of 6-year-old JonBenét in an extra spare room that is down there in the basement. John immediately picks up his daughter and brings her upstairs. The autopsy later showed that she passed away from asphyxia, she was strangled, and she also had a fractured skull. She had blunt force trauma. JonBenét was covered on her torso with a blanket. She also had her wrist and neck wrapped up. Her neck was wrapped with a cord and a paintbrush, which was made to make a homemade garrote to take her life, and also had duct tape on her mouth. The individual who did JonBenét's autopsy said it appeared that her private parts had been wiped clean, and her private area also sustained some damage. There was undigested pineapple in JonBenét's stomach, but her parents said they don't remember giving her any pineapple the night before. But there was a bowl of pineapple found in the kitchen, and Patsy's fingerprints were found on the bowl. You don't remember giving her any pineapple, why are your fingerprints on the bowl? Although this isn't any huge evidence to start pointing fingers, they still keep this in the back of their mind. The Boulder County Police focus almost immediately on JonBenét's parents. They look more into this ransom note, with it being one of their only clues at the time, and find that this ransom note was wrote with paper from the Ramsey home, and the pen that was used on the ransom note was from the home as well. They compared JonBenét's dad and her brother's handwriting to the ransom note, and they were cleared as who wrote this letter. It was not them. Then they compared her mother Patsy's handwriting to the ransom note, and there was a lot of similarities between her mom's handwriting and the handwriting on the ransom note. This ransom note actually ended up being one of the longest ransom letters in history, filled with a bunch of inconsistent nonsense. The Ramseys claimed someone had to have broken in because no one in the house was involved in her murder. It was snowing in Boulder, Colorado that day, and there are no footprints outside the house. There's no signs of any fresh snow being tracked in the home. There was a basement window that was open, but there was cobwebs on it, as if no one had even entered it. JonBenét's father claims that JonBené was never sexually abused at any point in her life, but the year leading up to her murder, she had had dozens upon dozens of wellness checks, which isn't completely out of the
Have you ever felt so lonely that you've actually thought about joining a cult? Bitch, the answer better we know. Today I've decided to be in the swamp with Shrek. I gotta go. So this story is coming from a girl named Paloma, and she said this happened to her when she was around 15 or 16 years old. She explains how her family was super religious, and she just felt a disconnect from them. Because of this, she said that she started making a lot of friends at school, but it wasn't so much the popular kids, it was with the kids who also looked like they were loners and dressed in all black. She wanted to make friends with people who were the complete opposite of her family. These people had tattoos, had like devil symbols and things like that, and she knew that her family would be like repulsed if they ever saw them. Although these people may appear to be bad or whatever, she said that they were all really good friends that she made, except for one particular person which she regrets meeting. Before she tells us what's about to happen, she just wants to explain that she knows what she did was really stupid. She knows that she did it because she was really lonely and she didn't want her new friends to reject her. So just keep that in mind. Out of all the friends that she made, there was this one guy who you would think would be really popular. He was good looking. He knew how to talk to people. He wasn't like an introvert. So she never understood why he was a loner, because she said that he would be charming. All the girls would look at him, but he wasn't so much part of that popular kid group. He knew a lot about like dark stuff, and he almost gave the vibes of like cult leader. That's how charming he was, that she felt like if he were to start a cult, people would definitely join. One day he comes up to the group and he starts talking like very vague about something, and he starts explaining to them that he feels like some of them are ready to go to the next level, and that in his opinion only 3 of them would be ready. The 3 people that were ready to go to the next level was Paloma and 2 other friends in that group. Again, Paloma was confused because he wasn't necessarily saying what they were ready for, like what he was talking about. So they were all just listening in, but he was never saying like a specific thing. She asked him like, what are you talking about? What are we ready for? And that's when he says that he is a part of a group that's very secretive, that's very private. He explains that he can't give any more details, but that he wanted to invite those 3 people to be a part of it. Somehow they all agreed to go, and it was going to be on the weekend because they were going to have to go to this ranch, and he explains to them that there is going to be this initiation ritual. If I would have heard initiation ritual, I would have been gone. What do you mean? So this guy ends up telling them, before we get there, I just need you guys to do 3 things. 1, do not speak, don't say anything. 2, let me be your guide and let me transition you into this group. And 3, I need you guys to trust me 100% without questioning anything that I tell you. What? Like, bitch, I even question my mom. Like, what makes you think I'm not gonna question you? He then adds, as soon as you guys join this group, your life is gonna change completely. She says that when they get to this ranch, it's almost like if this ranch is decorated for a scary movie. There were torches, there was people who were all in black robes where you couldn't see their faces. She says that she thought that maybe this was a joke, like maybe he was playing this elaborate prank to see how far they would go.
I have another creepy story about Epping Forest. This one comes from a girl who was a maid of honour a few years ago. Place where the bestie was getting married is like a stately home, kind of like one of those big countryside homes. The grounds were these stables that have been converted into like hotel rooms where guests could stay. But because they're travelling from so far, they decide that they're going to rent one of these rooms a few days before so that they can be there nice and early, because she's going to do her friend's makeup in the morning. So it's like going to be early doors. The wedding venue, they normally didn't let guests stay there unless there was a wedding there. Like you had to be in the wedding party of that night to stay there. But it just so happened that they didn't have a wedding the night before, and the people who lived there full time, they agreed that they could have that room. So there's no other guests. It's just them. They arrived quite late the night
in the
before, and it's a
building
little bit eerie. The people
about
they
you,
just
and it's no
yeah,
one
like,
else
"Look, yourself,
like you
we'll
is what they're
be
getting.
like,
Positive
like,
vibes
no problem,
only.
we won't disturb you."
Shout out to
First thing
King
you'll
Sauce
notice
Boss
that
in the
it's very
build
badly
about
lit. Like there's
Shout
not
out to
even a light
Sauce the
outside
Boss,
their
of
room.
course,
They do not
man.
have
Who's
the
in the
best night's
building,
sleep on the
man?
first night.
Shout
So
out
they
to
are
Sauce the
constantly
Boss, of
woken
course.
up by these different noises outside from what they think are animals. They hear screaming, they hear what seems to be crying. Every time they get up and they look out the window, there's no one there. But it's so dark, they couldn't see anything, even if there was. When she wakes up in the morning, her boyfriend has pushed the sofa in the room up against the door because he was so convinced that he could hear somebody ripping on their lock. Alarm set at 5 a.m. the next morning, but just before the alarm goes off, they hear like a tapping at the window. And when they open their blinds, there's a man standing there and he's doing something with the window. It almost looks like he's cleaning it. Them are looking at each other like, this is odd. How disrespectful. It's 5 in the morning. Okay, we understand that there's not really supposed to be people staying here at this time, but it just seems a bit strange to have somebody come and clean the windows so early. Not only that, the man himself, he's rude. You would think if a member of staff came to your window and woke you up and they've opened their blinds to have a look at you, you'd kind of do one of these, like, sorry, I've woken you up, didn't realize you were in there, something like that. This man doesn't do any of that. He looks dead into their eyes in the most creepy way that just makes both of their blood run cold. They immediately both jump back and they shut those curtains as quickly as they open them. When the wedding party finally arrive and the makeup starts to get going, everyone wants to know how her first night was. And she doesn't want to seem ungrateful or like she's putting down this wedding venue. And apart from this one incident, the staff have gone above and beyond and they're really kind and really accommodating. The wedding goes ahead without a hitch. They have a wonderful, beautiful wedding. But the next morning, when everybody wakes up with a hangover and goes to eat their breakfast together, a few of the members of the bridal party complain of having that same man at their window. And in fact, one of the groomsmen, who had actually decided to stay in his car because he'd had a drink and he didn't book a room, said that he was awoken by a strange man tapping on his window. He had just assumed that it was a member of staff and that he was going to say, you can't sleep here, because he had already been warned that he couldn't sleep in his car. So he just stayed asleep, pretended to be asleep. He said he got the scare of his life when this man actually tried to get in to his car and get into him. When the bride and groom hear about this guy that has woken several of their friends and family up, they decide to just politely bring it up to the venue. The wedding venue email back and say they're going to investigate the situation. A few weeks later, they do report back to the bride and groom. They say they have actually reported this incident to the police because they have no record.
When this girl came home acting strange, her parents got their phone out and recorded her, but then she vanished. This is the baffling unsolved mystery of Carly Gousset that has plagued investigators for years. It was the 13th of October 2018 in California. 16-year-old Carly Gousset lived in the White Mountain Estates area of Chalfant Valley. She was a lovely girl. She was a typical teenager. She loved hanging out with her friends and just doing normal teenage stuff. She really loved watching films, particularly scary ones. Her parents never imagined that her life would turn into a real-life horror film. Now, her parents divorced when she was just 2 years old, and after living with her mum, Lindsay, at first, she then ended up moving to live with her dad, Zach, and his wife. She had 3 brothers, Kane, Cole, and Cody. Classmates described her as quite a quiet girl, but she started acting very out of the ordinary in the weeks before she vanished. It's thought that she'd started smoking substances, and I know a lot of teenagers go through this kind of like rebellious phase. So
about
maybe
you,
that's
and
what
it's
was
no one
happening to her.
else
She started
like
to
you
get
is
really
what they're
paranoid, even telling some of her friends that she feared her phone was being tracked. On the 12th of October, Carly went out with some friends and rang her stepmom Melissa at 8 p.m. in a panic. Told her that she wanted picking up, and when her stepmom got to her, she had already left the party and was kind of running off down a road somewhere. When her stepmom got her home, Carly was extremely confused and disorientated. She apparently admitted to her parents to smoking some substances, and her parents were convinced that these weren't just normal substances. This must have been laced with something quite strong. Carly was acting so odd that Melissa actually got her phone out to secretly record her. In an 8-minute-long recording, the stepmom advised Carly to get some sleep, to which Carly responded, "You're going to kill me." Stepmom asked, "Why would I kill you? That's preposterous." Carly replied really distressed, saying, "I'm just thinking all this demonic stuff. I can't help it." She was apparently really distraught in this recording. Now, the stepmom said that she took this recording in order to hopefully kind of document this and be able to confront Carly and show her what she was like the following night. But tragically, they would never get to see her again. Once the family had gone to bed, Carly seemingly got up, left the house, and just disappeared. Multiple eyewitnesses reported seeing a girl that did match her description walking south, approximately 30 yards east of Highway passed with no sign of Carly. Despite this, the family have still not given up hope. There are theories that she had some kind of psychotic break and maybe ran away scared. But if that was the case, surely, and she'd succumbed to the elements, surely her body would have been found by now. Other theories include maybe her being trafficked, which is absolutely horrific. Interestingly, Carly's dad was arrested at a later stage on unrelated DV charges. When Carly vanished, she was 5'7" and weighed 110 pounds. We've all had those moments, right, where somebody comes up to you on public transport and sits right next to you despite there being loads of free seats. I doubt you've ever expected them to cut off your head. This case will put you off public transport for life, and the most terrifying part is the cannibal killer in this case is now free. It was a warm day in July 2008 in Portage la Prairie, about 40 miles from Winnipeg. Tim McLean was a really well-liked 22-year-old guy. He actually worked as a carnival barker, which is a job that I'd never heard of before, but apparently it's very similar to like an announcer. Tim was traveling home on the 30th of the month on a Greyhound Canada bus. Now, Tim was minding his own business. He had his headphones in. He was looking out of the window, just enjoying his journey, waiting to get back. That was until another passenger boarded the bus at 6:55 p.m. And I feel like we've all had those moments, haven't we, where we just feel like, why are you coming and sitting next to me when there are so many available seats elsewhere? It's just unnerving, isn't it? And I think that Tim must have felt this way, but he was quite a polite guy. So when the man, Vince Lee, approached him and sat by him on the bus, Tim just smiled at him and asked if he was okay. As Tim smiled at this guy and asked how he was doing, all hell broke loose. Vince began lunging at him with a knife. He started slicing into him in full view of the other passengers. They were obviously horrified and totally fearing for their lives at this point. Tim was trapped, and the horrific attack got more and more gruesome. He started mutilating Tim, who was literally pinned into the seat. The bus driver pulled over immediately and everybody fled the vehicle except for poor Tim, who was totally trapped. He was just clinging on to life. That's when Vince decapitated him. He then held his head up to show the horrified passengers that had fled the bus. Some were crying, some were throwing up at the side of the road. You probably think this couldn't get any worse, but you would be wrong. Vince then began eating his flesh. The traumatized bus driver and passengers immediately started alerting emergency services, who raced to the scene. When they got there, a standoff began. By this point, Tim was literally being eaten in front of all of these people. Now, police noted that what was so strange about this attack was, despite how violent and vicious it was, Vince really didn't seem to be angry. He seemed very robotic. He locked him inside of this bus for the safety of everybody around him, obviously, and a standoff began for 3 hours. That was until Vince started to try and flee the bus by getting out of the window, and he was eventually tasered and arrested. Now, Vince later claimed that, quote, "The voice told me I was the third story of the Bible, that I was like the second coming of Jesus and I was to save people from a space alien attack." He said he believed Tim was an alien. Judge agreed that Vince was not guilty due to insanity, and he was admitted to a mental facility until 2017. In a move that stunned his local family and the community, he was then released. Now, he expressed remorse and asked the family for forgiveness. And I don't know about you guys, but I just could never forgive something like this. Let me know your opinions in the comments.
It makes me so physically ill that I was researching this and I got dizzy and I wanted to throw up. It's awful. This is probably the biggest warning that I'll ever have to give in a video because it's that horrible. So a big warning if you have a queasy stomach, but also on top of that, my usual warning, this video does involve a baby. If you think that listening to this is going to harm your mental health in any way, please skip this video. If you need to skip this video, skip this one, and I will see you in my next one. Love you. Baby Emily Berenger was a preemie baby. She was born 8 weeks early in November of 2015. She was the fourth baby born to her mother, Amanda, and Amanda adored all of her children. She just loved being a mom. In the summer of 2016, the family moved to West Virginia in the hopes of settling down in a good neighborhood to raise a family. When in West Virginia, Amanda met a man named Benjamin Taylor, and he swept her off her feet. He basically gave her everything that she was looking for. He was loving, he was kind, he was good with the kids, and seemed excited to be a father figure to them and become part of the family. Soon after they met, they started dating, and only a couple months into their relationship, Benjamin moved in. October 2nd of 2016, it was a Sunday. Around 9 p.m. that night, Amanda put her 3 oldest children to bed and she got ready for bed herself. Benjamin, however, wasn't ready for bed, and neither was baby Emily. She was wide awake in her swing in the living room, so Benjamin said that he would watch her until they got tired and went to bed. Benjamin wanted to do laundry that was in the basement, so at some point he went downstairs and he took baby Emily down with him. Amanda woke up around 4 in the morning that night. She noticed that Benjamin wasn't in bed yet, and when she went to go check on the kids, she peeked into Emily's crib and noticed that she wasn't there either, so she assumed that the two of them were downstairs. They must have fallen asleep in the living room together. So she walked downstairs, but she didn't see them, and the only other place left to check was the basement. Amanda made her way down to the basement and saw something that would haunt her for years to come. Benjamin was there. His pants were down to his knees, and he was kneeling over baby Emily, and because the light in the basement was dim, Amanda didn't immediately notice what was going on. She was just confused. When she asked him, Benjamin said that he was down there wiping Emily off, but as soon as Amanda got a glimpse of her daughter's face, she knew that something was severely wrong. Emily had nothing on. The only thing on her was blood. She wasn't breathing normally, only releasing gurgling sounds, and her skin was cold to the touch. Amanda picked up 9-month-old Emily as fast as she could to get away from Benjamin, and then she slapped him across the face, screaming over and over again, "What did you do? What have you done?" She sprinted upstairs to call 911, and into the phone she was screaming, quote, "I think that scumbag her," end quote, while explaining to the operator that her daughter was profusely bleeding from down there. When law enforcement got there, they saw Amanda on the porch holding her baby, and they rushed to get them help. Benjamin was drenched in blood, and he told officers that he must have gotten dirty when he picked Emily up. As soon as baby Emily got to the hospital, she was put on life support, and 2 days later, her mother Amanda made the heartbreaking decision to take her off life support. And 9-month-old baby Emily was pronounced deceased. Her autopsy revealed just how vile her injuries were. She had skull fractures, which were listed as her official cause of death, deep scalp hemorrhages, blunt force trauma to the neck, head, chest, abdomen, buttocks, pelvis, and extremities, evidence of smothering, and 32-year-old Benjamin was arrested and charged with first-degree SA. He was later charged with first-degree murder and was being held on a $2 million bond. Benjamin's story to law enforcement was that he blacked out the night of the alleged crime, so he could not say for certain whether he and murdered Emily. That was literally his defense, that he just didn't remember, he just wasn't sure. On his phone, it was found that he had been searching up at night from 2:52 to 3:17 in the morning the night of the crime. He is literally sick in the head. When the public learned of what happened to baby Emily, a petition was signed by so many Americans for the government to publicly hang Benjamin Taylor, but that petition was eventually taken down. The trial began March of 2019, and get this, Benjamin's friends and family took the stand in support of Benjamin, talking about how great of a guy he is, how he's very trusting and caring, and stating how they didn't think that he was capable of committing what he was being accused for. His father sat in front of the courtroom and said that he was very proud of his son. Initially, I was shocked hearing that, but then I guess the apple does not fall far from the.
These are the scariest stories on TikTok. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and I stumbled across this woman's page maybe a week ago. I am referring to this woman's video. Now, I immediately followed this woman because I could just not get enough of her stories. So basically, she is an at-home caregiver for elderly people and has experienced extreme bouts of supernatural occurrences while taking care of these elderly people. It's important to note that she is spiritually sensitive, so she feels things and she can see things sometimes if the spirit wants to make itself known. And when I tell you, I have never heard stories that gave me chills in the middle of the daytime. And this woman's stories give me chills. Now, she tells a variety of stories, and I've listened to like literally every single one because they range from her caregiving stories to stories of her childhood and living in a haunted house. And what's crazy is that I thought my experiences were like extreme. I also really enjoy watching these videos because she has such a different outlook on coming into contact with these things. And I cannot emphasize enough, like I cannot get enough of her stories. And the story that resonates with me the most is when she lived in a haunted house when she was younger, and her little brother was consistently seeing this man that nobody else could see. Like I'm talking a man in a fedora hat who would essentially taunt these people. And there is one part of this story that gave me the worst chills ever. I was literally on my lunch break, and this one was going through the motions of like experiencing this male entity. And I guess her brother needed to get up in the middle of the night for a glass of water like he normally does. Well, he opens the door and he's like, I'm not going to go get my glass of water. Wakes up his sister, the woman who's telling the story, because he's scared. She says she walks out and he's sitting crisscross on the island in the kitchen. And this is the first time that she could see him. And I don't know what it is, but I could like clear as day see this man. And she particularly said that he was like hand in his palms, smiling at them as he's crisscrossed on this island. And then I guess because of this, the woman wakes up her mom. The mom wakes up, gets the glass of water for her son, and tells the kids like, go back to bed. And I really have props to this mother because she's in multiple stories of this woman's, and she just shows no fear to spirits. But she essentially cast him out and was like, you are not allowed to see my children. You do not show yourself to my children. That is it. And I guess that didn't really work because of the kind of spirit that he was. So her mom got her sister involved. And when her sister was like, this is what you need to do, and they did it, they never saw him again. And I don't know. I could literally go on and on and on about this woman's stories because they are just so good. But anyways, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
Sauce, the boss in the building. Sauce, the boss in the building. About you, and it's no one else like you is what they're getting. Positive vibes only. Shout out to King Sauce Boss in the building.
Sauce the boss, yo, Sauce the boss, of course. Send sauce. Sauce the boss, yo, Sauce the boss, of course. Send sauce.
And lack of speech, so he notified a child psychologist to meet with the girls. As a result, the twins were sent to speak to therapists to try and understand them more, to try and help them, but they refused to speak, so that was unsuccessful. The twins were then sent to a hospital because their behavior was so noticeably odd and nobody could make sense of it, but they also refused to speak there, so that didn't help. Then they were sent to a boarding school, also wouldn't talk there, so that didn't help either. Eventually, a decision was made that the only way to help them learn how to live independently would be to separate them, but separating them only made things worse because they stopped eating, they stopped sleeping, would hardly move. They would just exist, but there was almost no life behind their eyes. So eventually they were reunited because that situation obviously wasn't helping. When they were back together, June and Jennifer became even more isolated to the world, believe it or not. They would basically spend 23 out of the 24 hours of the day in their bedroom, only with each other. They wouldn't leave the room to eat. I assume the parents brought the food to their bedroom, but they simply didn't want to coexist with anyone but each other. They refused to be in the same room as anyone else. They would not enter a room if someone else was in there. They wouldn't go watch TV if another family member was watching it. If they did want to watch TV, they would leave a note for their family saying, we want to watch TV at this time, and the family would leave a door open so the twins could sit in the hallway and watch TV, and then they would run back to their bedrooms. So all of their time was spent in their bedrooms. But that being said, they did do stuff. They played with each other, they played with dolls. They eventually found their favorite hobby, which was writing, and the older that they got, the more sure they were that they wanted to write as a career. They each kept a diary in which they would write in daily, and they wrote a number of stories, poems, novels, etc. And I found this really interesting, but their favorite thing to write about were stories of young boys and girls who exhibited strange and
Sauce the boss. It's his birthday. Everybody wish him happy birthday.
Oh, this is big right here, y'all. Everybody wish Sauce, the official boss, happy birthday, man. Let's go. Let's see it in the timeline.
Oh man, we're back once again.
I like them.
You know, it's a beautiful day.
I like like to wish
If you feeling down, just get you a bag of that. And just light up.
I like to wish
Can't fire Mr.
Sauce the
Head
boss.
Rock. Can't greet him with two, won't be the third eye. Killer Vision,
I like to give a big shout to
Brent
Ashley
Hospital.
Gordon.
Okay, let me on this track. Accidents and opera O's and conscience, unconscious. Flow riding on my train.
I like how that
Denzel,
sound,
Chris
yo.
Pine, unstoppable. Albert
I like to
Einstein,
give a big happy
imagination
birthday
is
to,
more important than knowledge. Therefore, I'm
Sauce the
flying off the
boss.
tracks. Extraterrestrial blunt, I got it on my lap. When I land soul train line, hop up on my dad.
I like to give a
They
big shout
fear
to
what
Billy
they don't
Chapo.
understand. I forgive them cause they don't really know no better. Hope let them walk on water. I'm dancing in the middle
Shout
of
to
the
Sauce the
Atlantic
boss,
Ocean
man.
with a
Happy
polo
birthday.
sweater. How bad do you want success? I was holding my breath unconsciously. The conscious me woke up and came up for air. I turned 136 into the
Big
boom, but
dog.
dancing bachata, guaranteed them in the drink.